Hello everyone and welcome back. My name is Mr. Covalent, and in this video I'm going to talk about how to convert names of binary compounds to formulas. So you may have seen my video where I talk about going from the formula to the name using the crossover method. Here it's the exact opposite. So you're given the name. Remember that in the name of your binary covalent compound, it's going to have prefixes. So the prefixes are going to tell you what the subscripts are. So literally the steps are, first you're going to write the symbols of the elements from the name, right? So if you've got carbon dioxide, well, carbon and oxide refers to oxygen. So you got carbon and oxygen, you're going to write those symbols for those elements down in the same order. So you're going to write them in the same order as you find them in the name. So carbon in carbon dioxide is written first, so that symbol will be written first. Right, so for example, if I have carbon dioxide as my name, carbon dioxide, right? So I'm going to write the symbols of the elements that are in the name. So carbon is written first, so that's going to be first. And then dioxide, the second oxide here refers to oxygen, so I'm going to write that second. Okay. So that's step one. Step two, you're going to put the subscripts. Easy, right? So only two steps in naming or in writing the formula from the name. So, but what are some things you got to keep in mind? As I said, the prefix in front of your element is going to tell you what the subscript of that element is, right? Now, one of the things that you have to watch out for is mono is not used for the first symbol, right? So here I just have carbon, there's no prefix. Anytime you don't have a prefix for the first element, assume there's only one. So here the subscript is going to be 1. We don't write ones, but there's a 1 carbon there that you see in the formula. So we just leave it like that. Okay, so then we're going to do the prefix for the other one. So here we have the prefix di. So di is the prefix. If you know your prefixes, which you should know your prefixes, right? You got mono, di, tri, tetra, penta, hepta, hexa. Well, I flipped those two. So hexa is 6, hepta is 7, octa, nona, and deca up to 10. You could do, other ones, but we'll go up to 10. So we have di here. Di, you should know, means 2. So that means we have a 2 subscript for the oxygen. So there's the formula for carbon dioxide. So we went from the name to the formula. Now, thing to keep in mind, you have to remember from my previous video that compounds like HF, HCl, HBr, HI, these are substances that have a hydrogen with a halogen. They are typically often named without prefixes. So you could name these with the prefixes, like this would be hydrogen monofluoride, hydrogen monochloride, hydrogen monobromide, hydrogen monoiodide, and then this would be dihydrogen sulfide, right? You could name it using the strategy that we talked about in my previous video. But many times, often they are just written without prefixes, right? So this is just hydrogen fluoride. This is just hydrogen chloride. This is just hydrogen bromide, hydrogen iodide, and this would be just hydrogen sulfide, right? Instead of dihydrogen sulfide, right? So you got to remember those exceptions. So remember that these can be written or often named without prefixes. They're not going to have prefixes in their name. Just the hydrogen and then the name of your second element with the IDE ending. Remember, you got to drop that ending at IDE. And mono is not used for the first element in all cases, right? So carbon dioxide is a good example. Let's look at another example, right? So for example, if I gave you H, let's do H2S as an example, right? So if I gave you H2S, you'd have to remember, oh, H2S is one of those exceptions that is often written without uh, your prefixes, right? So you might identify this as dihydrogen. Oops, going the other way. I should give you dihydrogen. If I give you hydrogen sulfide, if I gave you that one, then you'd have to remember, oh, this is one of those exceptions. Don't be fooled by the name, right? Because if you're given hydrogen sulfide and you don't remember, oh, wait a minute, there's no prefixes in this. You might think this is an ionic compound, right? There's no mono, so you might think there's one each. You might think that this is HS, right? So you might make that mistake. So you got to remember that H2S is often named without the prefixes. So hydrogen sulfide. So you got to remember there's two hydrogens there. One of the ways you can remember how the formula goes with these is, as I kind of mentioned before, you can kind of assume it's ionic, right? If you don't know these, just to let you know, these are acids, right? And acids are ionic in water. They will dissociate, they will ionize in water, right? So as gases, if we're treating these as gases, then we wouldn't treat them as acids, right? So these would just be your molecular substances that we would name in the way that we're talking about in this video and my previous video. So if we think of these as ionic, then you can think of a balancing of charge, right? So fluorine, chlorine, bromine, and iodine, they're all in group 7, so you would expect them to have a -1 charge. And we know, or you should know, that hydrogen often has a +1 charge on it, right? If we're talking about acids, right? You have an H plus and you have an anion with some charge. You need the right number of H pluses to balance the charge on your anion. So if we're thinking about fluorine, fluorine has a -1 charge. That's the fluoride ion. So we need one hydrogen to balance that charge. H plus F minus balances charge, you get HF. Same thing for HCl, right? So if chlorine is in group 7, it's going to have a -1 charge. It's going to need one hydrogen plus to balance the charge. So HCl is the formula. So you can kind of remember that way. So when we come to sulfur, right, the sulfide ion has a 2- charge because it's in group 6, right? It gains 2 electrons to be like the noble gas. So that means it's going to need 2 H pluses to balance the charge. Oops. Sorry about that. So it's going to need 2 H pluses to balance the charge, so we have an H2 here. So that's an easy way that might be helpful, I think, to remember the formulas for these substances that begin with hydrogen. If it begins with hydrogen, you can think of it as an acid that can ionize in water, and so that will help you figure out the formula. So when you're given hydrogen sulfide, you write, aha, it begins with the word hydrogen, so that means there's an H, it begins with an H, and when a formula begins with hydrogen, that's usually an indicator that it's an acid, and so you can pay attention to the balancing of charge. Even though these technically are not ionic substances, you can treat them as if they were, right? So in this case, I have hydrogen sulfide, so I would remember, oh, well, hydrogen, that's the first part, that kind of indicates an acid. So I can think ions, sulfide, referring to sulfur. Sulfur usually has a 2- charge. So then I would have 2 H pluses to balance the sulfide ion. And so I get the formula H2S. And so that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you go from the name to the formula. So write down the symbols of each element. Write the first symbol for the first name first, and then the second symbol for the second name second, and then look at the prefixes. Prefixes will tell you what the subscripts are. And then also, if there's no prefix, then that means there's only one. We don't write mono for the first one. So if you don't have a prefix for the first one, then there's only one there. If you don't have prefixes for any of them, double check to make sure that you don't have one of these. If you do, then make sure you write the formula accordingly to balance charge as if it's an ionic compound, even though it's technically not an ionic compound. I hope this is helpful. If this was helpful, hopefully that wasn't too confusing. If you enjoyed this video, if this was helpful in any way, then please, by all means, like the video, hit that like button. Also, share the video with your friends. Make sure that you subscribe to my channel. Hit that notification bell. When you do, make sure you click all so you can be notified by all the videos I put out. Finally, put a comment down below in the comment section. Let me know what you think. Ask me questions. I would love to hear from you. If you have a question you want me to answer, if you have a problem you want me to solve or help you with, if you have any topic you would like me to cover, put it down below so that way I can do that for you. I would love to do that for you. Thanks for joining me and have a great day.